إلهي إن كان الندم على الذنب توبة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. We seek the protection of God from Shaitan, who has been expelled from the special mercy of God. If we avoid the satanic habit of arrogance, whatever we know to be true by the guidance of the God-given intellect, the divine revelation, the human conscience, we submit. And if we avoid the satanic habit of defiance, whatever we know to be evil and wrong, by the guidance of the God-given intellect, the divine revelation, the human conscience, we don't commit. And if we have reliance on God, definitely we'll get the strength to be able to identify, to resist, and to overcome any satanic temptation. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We humbly seek grace and guidance from God because He is the all-perfect being. Nobody can achieve any goodness or perfection until and unless Allah wills it so. And we ask for His grace and guidance because He is Rahman. His Rahmah, His love, His mercy, His attention reaches out to all of us, creates us, sustains us, and enables us to reach perfection. And we ask for His grace and guidance because He is Rahim. He promises abundant reward, support here in the dunya, and eternal, unimaginable, profound, diverse reward in the hereafter. But only for those amongst us who believe in Him and who submit to His will. Alhamdulillah, all praise belongs to God, the all-perfect being. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam praises God in one of his sermons in these words: Alhamdulillah al-mutajalli li khalqihi bi khalqih wal-zahiri li qulubihim bi hujjatih khalaqa al-khalqa min ghayri rawiyatin idh kanat al-rawiyatu la taliqu illa bi dhawi الضمائر وليس بضمير في نفسه. Praise be to God who displays Himself, who manifests Himself for His creation, the human beings, through the rest of the creation. Everything that is around us, the natural world, is a manifestation of God's power, of God's wisdom, of God's knowledge, of God's love and grace and planning. One of the greatest scientists, Albert Einstein, whose prediction about the gravitational waves has recently been confirmed, he made an interesting statement. He says, the human mind isn't capable of fully understanding the universe. We, the scientists, we are just like that little child who enters a huge library which is filled with books, all the walls, from the floor to the ceiling. This little child knows someone must have written these books and someone must have arranged these books on the shelves. But the child doesn't know who, the child doesn't know how, but there is that mysterious wonder in the scientist as he observes the universe, and the inescapable conclusion that yes, there is a designer and an organizer and a planner, a creator and a sustainer. Amirul Mu'mineen says, praise be to Him. Every moment, every item of creation is a display of His perfection. But beyond that, beyond the physical senses that can perceive the presence of God, more important is the heart, the spirit, the mind. وَالظَّاهِرِ لِقُلُوبِهِمْ بِحُجَّتِهِ. Allah even talks to the hearts, to the very core of every human being. In that, He makes them experience certain situations where they begin to realize that they are totally helpless, that they are powerless, and they become hopeless in anything and everything which they thought had some sort of power and some sort of life and ability to help. And then they turn naturally towards a higher supreme being, because this has been hardwired into them, into their brains. They turn naturally to Him and submit and admit to His existence and presence. Praise be to Him, Imam says, He's the one who created everything without thinking the way we human beings think. Thought processes whereby we grow up in this material physical world, we use our faculties, our senses, we register the stimuli, a memory is formed in our minds, we have these experiences, and as we grow, we begin to associate, synthesize, organize our thoughts and reach conclusions and understand the universe and plan how to live in this universe. These thought processes are a characteristic of the human mind, the created mind. Imam alayhi salam says God does not have this mind. He's beyond that. He's the creator of the mind. He's the creator of the thought. خَرَقَ عِلْمُهُ بَاطِنَ غَيْبِ السُّتُرَاتِ وَأَحَاطَ بِغُمُوضِ عَقَائِدِ السَّرِيرَاتِ. And basically His knowledge, He doesn't need a mind. He doesn't need thinking. He doesn't need to be able to figure out and make a logical, synthetical argument, minor premise, major premise, logical conclusion. No, this is all the human necessity. It is said that every invention, technological invention that man has made, it's based on the observation of the world of nature. Be it the ship which is sailing on the ocean by observing how certain animals float on the sea, be it the flying aircraft by observing the flight mechanism of birds who fly. Human beings require a mind to observe, to analyze, to organize, not God, because His knowledge is unlimited. In fact, He knows our thoughts before even we think. He knows our thoughts and is closer to our thoughts than the thinker himself. In fact, He knows everything beyond the covers that are blocking us to be able to appreciate the core and the depth of everything. Praise be to Him. أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتقوى الله. Community of believers, I wish to remind you, as I do myself, the necessity of taqwa. This week we commemorated, according to one historical report, the anniversary of the demise of the Holy Lady Fatima, Salamullah alayha. Whereby the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt have told us that she lived 75 days. 75 يوما, 75 days after her father. It's interesting, after burial, the message of taqwa I would like to share and remind ourselves. After her burial, Amirul Mu'mineen gives a short address which is recorded in the Nahjul Balagha, and he addresses the Prophet. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, I have brought back to you the amana that you gave me. فَلَقَدْ اسْتُرْجِعَتِ الْوَدِيعَةِ. There was a wadi'ah that you entrusted me with. وَأُخِذَتِ الرَّهِينَ. This great blessing and gift that you granted me, I have returned it back to you. Now without her presence and companionship, my grief is going to be long, and my nights are going to be restless and sleepless. أَمَّا حُزْنِي فَسَرْمَدْ وَأَمَّا لَيْلِي فَمُسَهَّدْ. I would just like to take a message from this admission by Imam alayhi salam. Notice he looks at his spouse as an amana, as a wadi'ah given to him by the father-in-law. Essentially, if a marriage is based on this fundamental acknowledgement that this spouse is someone who was born to another family, who loved her and him. It's a mutual attitude. And this child was brought up with full love and care, and is appreciated and is thanked for, and is a blessing now that the individual has become mature. So as the person comes to my life, I should know that it's a trust given to me, how much care and love and appreciation and acknowledgement of this blessing of God that I do. One is the respect I should give because the spouse has been trained by her parents or his parents. And number two, it's a blessing from God. If, and I'm telling you, studies have been done in America, studies have been done in the UK, which clearly show marriages which begin to have problems. When you start to analyze at the core of it, what is missing are these two realities. They never considered each other as a trust, as an amana in which khiyana is haram and to which I am responsible and answerable tomorrow. They never acknowledge that this is a gift and a blessing from God for which I have to be thankful. Yes, problems can occur, but the Sharia has given us guidance how to deal with those problems. This week also corresponds to the birth anniversary of one great scholar in the Islamic world. First time he was called the Hujjatul Islam, the proof of Islam. Sheikh Abu al-Ma'ali, Abu Hamid Muhammad al-Ghazali. Ghazali is considered to be by some scholars in the Sunni world to be the next best scholar in the whole Muslim history because of the immense contribution that he has done. And one of the major areas in which he has contributed is in Sufism. He's known as a Sufi master also. His magnum opus that he has compiled, Ihya Ulumuddin, the revival of the Islamic sciences. He saw in his time that there was decline in the true spiritual sciences. He says that I've learned all this fiqh and kalam and aqaid and tafsir, but this is all external, superficial, intellectual knowledge. My heart still seeks something. I'm not satisfied. So he went on a spiritual journey to purify himself, and the result of that was this book that he writes, and which is considered to be as a standard reference for many of these Sufi tariqas whereby they follow a sheikh, and this sheikh is supposed to have learned from his teachers and masters till they reach the Prophet ﷺ, whom they consider as the perfect human being to enable us to reach God. Sufism basically is a spiritual, internal, mystical practice whereby each one of these ibadat and each one of these transactions that we do has an inner spiritual dimension whereby it's the soul which gets purified from the filth and the pollution and the vices and the evil, and then the soul gets beautified with the good, virtuous, excellent traits, and then ultimately it prepares the heart to now be able to reach closer to God, to understand God, not by the thought processes, not by conceptual notions, but by the realization of the spirit and the spiritual experience, which is much more deeper and profound and life transformative. And these Sufi tariqas, there are many in the world, the Alawiyya, Badawiyya, Bikhtashi, Chishti, Khalwati, Mawlawi, Naqshbandi. Here in Tanzania, there's the Shadhiliyya, Qadiriyya, and they all follow the Sufi basic guidance of Ghazali. So I would like to share and remind us, ultimately Sufism is only valid to the extent that it can take us closer and understand better the Book of God and the Sunnah of the Prophet. So for example, Ghazali is quoted to say that the most important thing for every human being is to know his soul. If a man knows not his own soul and spirit, which is the nearest thing to him, then what is the use of him claiming to know others? Amir al-Mu'mineen says that معرفة النفس أنفع المعارف كيف يعرف غيره من يجهل نفسه. So essentially the most important task we have to perform is to be able to know who are we, what is the spirit that makes us human and different from animals. It's an interesting study. In 2015, if you look at the list of discoveries that were made, scientific discoveries, one interesting discovery is 99% of our genes and chromosomes we share with the chimpanzees. So, what's the difference between human and animal? That 1%? No. Physically, yes. But it's the spirit that distinguishes the human being from the animals. What is the spirit? What are its powers? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? How does anger work, passion work, the intellect, the power of imagination? What are the forces that can influence us, control us, make us, provoke us to anger, incite our passion? What is it? The true pleasure, physical pleasure versus spiritual pleasure, physical pain versus spiritual pain. This ma'rifatun nafs is essential. Otherwise, Ghazali says, you are just like a beggar who doesn't have anything for a meal, and then you are claiming that I can feed the whole of the town. How can you know others when you yourself don't know yourself? And he says that desires, animal desires, make slaves out of kings. You want to be able to influence the palace, you should know which desire to play with. Ghazali says, patience makes kings out of slaves. Or once you know your nafs, even if you're a slave outwardly, but inwardly you're a king. But if you don't know your nafs, and what controls it, and who is the outside force that can enslave you, even if outwardly you are a king or a governor, basically you're a slave. He says that beautiful example, he gives a parable, that the example of the soul in its relationship to the body is just like a riding animal. The body is an animal to be mounted upon and to be driven by the soul. And the soul therefore is required to take care of the body because it is the means for it to enable to reach its goal. It's just like somebody, he says, traveling to Makkah. You need a camel so that you can reach Makkah in the old days. So the purpose of Makkah is ziyarah to Baytillah. But if somebody gets busy with the camel, feeding it, adorning it, decorating it, and forgets the purpose, you'll perish on the way. You'll not reach Makkah. You'll not reach the ziyarah of Baytullah. Everybody is on a journey here. Ultimately, all of us are going to meet our Lord. The question is, how did we use our camel given to us? Did we use it to enable us to make this journey safely? Or no, the camel became a ruler over us. Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha says, beware, Allah, wa innal khataya khaylun shumus. Beware, the physical bodily desires which become sinful, they're just like horses which are wild. The reins are not in your control. You sit on that horse and it'll throw you off. You'll perish if you don't control your body. But in contrast, ala wa inna taqwa mataya dhululin. But a person who controls, has self-discipline, spiritual control over the body and the physical animal desires, it is just like a tame, controlled animal. You control the rein and the direction and the speed and the arrival at the goal and destination. Ghazali says that for me, nothing has been more difficult. He spent years. He was given a high position by the king of the time. He was made the Qazi, the Hujjatul Islam, the Shaykhul Islam. But at one stage he says, this is not satisfying me. These are all apparent sciences. I'm looking for the spiritual sciences. He retreated on a spiritual journey. At the end of it, he says, never have I dealt with anything which is more difficult than my own spirit and soul. Sometimes it helps me, sometimes it opposes me. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam warns us, as all the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt have warned us, and as the Quran also warns us, احذروا أهواءكم, tahadhari from your animal desires. كما تحذرون أعداءكم, just like the adu, you are careful and on alert, so also be careful about your animal desires. فليس شيء أعدى للرجال من اتباع أهوائهم. There's nothing more dangerous for a human being than to follow blindly his animal desires to a sinful consequence. And Imam adds one more, وَحَصَائِدِ أَلْسِنَتِهِمْ. There's nothing more dangerous to the human being. You want to know the degree of control. In private, we don't know. We're not allowed to make espionage and go and spy on a person in his privacy. But in public, there's one way to judge. Look at the way he controls his tongue. Imam says, the tongue, the cuttings of the tongue, these vain, useless, futile talk, abusive insults, beware, these are your enemies. This shows that you have no control over your nafs. Your nafs is controlling you just because you're provoked, just because you hear something, just because you feel the temptation to make a comment, whether it's a valid observation or not, whether it's examined and checked and investigated to be true or not, you just come out and speak. And that also nowadays, unfortunately speaking, is not one-to-one or in a group. Through these social media, be it the SMS, mass emails, WhatsApp, you can spread poisons very rapidly. The hadith says that beware of the tongue. Ghazali says beware of the tongue. The tongue is very small and very light, but it can take you to the greatest of the heights, or it can put you down to the lowest of the depths. And this is what the Imams have told us also. Al-lisan miftah kulli khayr wa shar. The tongue can either lead you to khayr or it can lead you to shar. فَيَنْبَغِي لِلْمُؤْمِنِ أَنْ يَخْتِمَ عَلَى لِسَانِهِ. And therefore control your tongue and seal it. كما يختم على ذهبه وفضته. Just like zahabu and feda, just like gold and silver. How come you're so careful and protective and guarding? So also your tongue, be careful how you use it. And Ghazali says, soft words are powerful. They can soften hearts which are as hard as rock. Harsh words can harden hearts which are as soft as silk. Words can do magic. Be careful how you use them. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam has reminded us, Al-qawlul hasan yuthri al-mal wa yunmi al-rizq. Good words, kind, polite, considerate, encouraging, praiseworthy words, or even criticism, but valid and fair and effective criticism. Good words have the power to increase your wealth, have the power to increase your sustenance, وَيُنْسِئُ الْأَجَلِ, and they have the power to prolong your life. Words prolong life. I don't know, maybe these abusive, insultive, degrading, hurtful words, before they hurt the recipient and the listener, they're hurting my heart, for example, stress, and then it shortens my life. Blood pressure shoots up, it shortens my life. Good words indicate that inside your body physiologically is also enjoying the health. يُحَبِّبْ إِلَى الْأَهْلِ, you become presentable and lovable in front of others, your family, your spouse, your children, your community. وَيُدْخِلِ الْجَنَّةِ, ultimately it's these words that will take you to Jannah. Kwanini, because Jannah is a place of goodness. of kindness, of grace, of mercy. If you never experience God's grace and kindness and mercy and goodness and perfection here in the dunya, how can you be rewarded there with Jannah? Ultimately, of course, there are many quotations from Ghazali. He says that keep company with those people who have a firm faith and listen to them, because their learning is of a sure faith, not of a doubtful faith. Unfortunately, there are people who may start creating doubts and objections. They may not be qualified scholars. Whenever you come across anyone who raises an objection against the faith, definitely the human beings have the right to ask questions, to inquire, to investigate, no problem. But if it is in contradiction to the fatwa of the experts whom we follow, the mujtahids who are the top scholars that we have identified worthy of following, therefore we have to be careful. We say to the doubter and to the skeptic, yes, you have the right to do your investigation, to have a different opinion, but in situations where there's differences of opinion, I will follow the opinion of the expert, who is my mujtahid. If you follow them, Ghazali says, so then you will be sure that your faith will become strong and firm, just like their faith, the faith of these people who have investigated the truth and found it and based it on strong foundations, has become strong. Let's pray to Allah for tawfiq to be able to experience the inner spiritual reality of Islam through following the outer teachings, but with sincerity, with submission, with understanding, with devotion. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Allah swears by time. Innal insana lafi khusr. Man, you are in a state of loss if constantly you do not seek the truth. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. Except for those who seek the truth, find it, accept it, live by it. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. And then they spread this message of truth. Wa tawasaw bis sabr. And collectively fight against evil. Sadaqallahu al-azim.